I'm going to be talking about a little bit about the Sunflower Survey. As you probably know, or if you're not, you're going to know now, the National Sunflower Association supports a national survey every other year. This year, I'm really thankful I was the lead on this, on coordinating this survey. So I'm just going to briefly show some of the results, some of the things that we saw this year. Before I really start, I just want to mention I did not do this alone for sure. I had the help of plenty of amazing specialists that they were there to support me. You saw some of these people today in this in this webinar as Janet, and I want to highlight 4 people that were extremely helpful. That actually they were what we call team leaders and helped me coordinate all the county agents. Also, as I mentioned, this is national survey, so those were the North Dakota help. But we also have specialists all across the country helping us from Nebraska, Texas, Kansas, even Manitoba. That's not in the US. Colorado, we have people from Minnesota. Everybody really helped to make this possible. Saying that, I do have to mention and say a special thanks to all the county agents here in North Dakota. And if you're a farmer in North Dakota, please go ahead and reach out to your county agent and say thank you, because without them, this survey would not be able to happen. Also, I want to say thanks to Joe, Janet, Anita, Jeff, Sam, Dennis, and Kartika that helped in the training of these agents. So we were able to actually take good quality data because we put together all this amazing team to train them. So just to get started, we did have 181 fields sampled this year, all across the area that you are seeing. And just to start, we're going to start with some descriptors of this data. So most of the fields that we sampled, for sure, they were oil. Only 13 were confectionery. If we have to this here. Sorry. Most of the fields that we scouted, they were dryland fields. Something that's tiny bit, something I find it interesting is which was the previous crop. We can see that mostly it's domained by small grains and corn. There were like 7 fields that they have a broadleaf as a previous crop, and as Sam mentioned, this is not recommended. I would really like to reach out to those farmers and really ask what's going on. And then something I find it quite interesting is distribution regarding the tillage system. So we have kind of 50% of the fields that we scouted, they were no-till, and then kind of like 25%, they were conventional till and minimal till. So something that's really interesting when I see this data is like, okay, which is the spatial distribution of this? Which is the spatial distribution of this no-till area, which is or no conventional till? And something I did in previously, every time I showed these results, is that, okay, can you imagine where the conventional tillage is all concentrated? And that's what we're going to see right now. So no-till, it's mostly concentrated in all west area of the sunflower plains area, let's say it. When we focus on conventional, we see that eastern North Dakota still have a high prevalence of conventional tillage, and it's mostly conventional tillage is concentrated there. Like I would love to see that area of that blue area that's no-till expand towards the east part of North Dakota. I always say, it's really hard to transition to a no-till system. It will be really hard for the first 3 to 5 years, but it's really worth it in terms of how can we conserve and we preserve our soil resource. Saying that, something that everybody is interested, of course, is yield. We calculate yield in two different ways. It's two estimations. We don't actually have measurements of yield, but we do have some calculations that we measure the head diameter, the number of plants, the seed size, all these different measurements, and we put it into an equation. And then the other measurement of yield that we have is visual estimation. It's just going there to the field, walk a bit, and just have an idea of this field probably is around this. Saying this, neither of these is near perfect. It just gives you a good idea of which is the prediction that how yield is going to be. Like probably will give you information, okay, this is going to be above average or below average, and that's the estimation that we are aiming. And when we see the calculation and the visual estimation relationship, we see that there is kind of a trend, but we tend to, let's say, overestimate the individual, or we are underestimating in the calculation one. Saying that, how this yield distributed, again, like this is the most interesting part of the survey, it's just seeing which is the spatial distribution of all this. And we can see that South Central North Dakota and basically South Dakota had, the lighter the color is the highest the yield, had higher yields in terms of this distribution. And we can see a little bit more about that. We can see that, and these are like different box plots for all the states that they were included in the survey. And again, we can see that South Dakota had higher yields compared to the rest of the states that they were in the survey. Something that's also really interesting is trying to compare this yield with the plant population that we assessed. And here we have a comparison between 2023 and 2025. If you are a little bit familiar with the crop physiology of sunflowers, you will know that the relationship between plant population and yield usually follows a plateau trend. So it'll start increasing linearly until a moment that including more plants in your plant population actually won't represent an increase in yield. So at the beginning, more plants, more yield, until a point that it plateaus. Saying that, we can see that we could see kind of an idea of that trend in 2023. So that just gives an idea that, okay, we reached that plateau, we reached that moment that that threshold that including more plants actually did not represent more yield. But when we moved to 2025, actually we did not reach that value. You can see that we're still in the linear phase of that plant population relationship. There's kind of a reason because of that. Like basically we have like a better environment on 2025. We have more rain, so we have like more resources in our environments to try to support more plants. So again, like that plant population optimum or threshold actually varies year to year, and we can see it in the survey as well. One thing that Sam mentioned, and something that's really interesting from the sunflower survey, is that we do actually try to assess the limiting factors. And this is just a nice plot showing the limiting factors for the most relevant limiting factors. And again, diseases are one of the main things that we are going to see, but something that's also really came up this year, it was plant spacing within the row. Saying that, again, seeing the spatial distribution, it's something that's really interesting when we are working with survey data. And this is the spatial distribution of the different limiting factors in the most important limiting factors. And as you can see, and I'm like just making like kind of giving a little bit of suspense, of which is my vision of this, is basically you cannot see any special patterns in what we are seeing here, unfortunately. So no special patterns for limiting factors, but something that we can try to dig in a little bit more into is trying to see the temporal patterns in these limiting factors. And something that you can see here again, diseases was really important, representing like 30% of the fields that they were scouted. They had the main problem were diseases, and then 14% was this plant spacing within the row. And if we move back in time, 2023, again, it was diseases was the number one. In 2021, okay, it was not that relevant, but to be fair, 2021 it was a huge drought year, so basically it's hard to win as a limiting factor if you have a drought. And then in 2019, again, disease it's again number one. When we talk about plant spacing, we can see that it's always in the top 5. And something I want to mention is that, okay, this year we have, at least in North Dakota, we have a really cold and wet spring, and we have a lot of issues at the beginning of the season to have a good emergence. And these show up. This is something that we saw in our sunflower fields. We saw problems with this. It's something real. I saw it as well. When we are talking about sunflowers, usually we'll say that it's a really plastic crop. We will say that usually sunflower will be able to compensate those gaps that we see in our fields. Up to a point, of course. And something that's really, really relevant when we're talking about this is that when we're talking about problems in plant spacing, usually they come linked with weeds. So when we have a lot of gaps, we are leaving just a lot of room for weeds to expand. And as we see, our third most limiting factor in our ranking, it's weeds, and something that it's been there constantly in the past years. If we see 2023 again, we see that problem. So we not only ask, okay, which is the most important, like what's the most relevant limiting factor that you see in the field? We also say, can you tell us which is the second limiting factor that you see in this field? And we see that disease, again, it's present. It's the number one second limiting factor in 2025, in 2023, again in 2019. Again, like 2021, it's kind of an outlier. So what's the take of this? Is basically this is if it is not the main limiting factor in your field, it was probably the second one. So it's something that's there and it's really relevant. So I'm not going to dig in much in the results of diseases, even though it's really important, mostly because Sam already covered this, and I'm actually running out of time. So I'm just going to head with talking a little bit about weeds, and then I'm really happy with Joe's presentation because he basically covered kochia, foxtailed, and pigweeds, and when we see the results in our survey, kochia was the number one weed present in our fields. So 45% of the fields that we scouted had kochia. And I'd like to see again the spatial distribution. So here you have only kochia and the field that it was present, and you have 3 colors here. Red, it means that it was a light infestation, and blue means that, okay, we had like a heavy infestation. We have a heavy problem. So as you can see, we have mostly light infestations, but they're all over the North Dakota state. We can see that, and it's all spread in South Dakota as well. Something about light infestations is that, okay, this is as concerning as as moderate or heavy, because usually you have light infestations when you spray, you try to control and you have some escapes. So this is really relevant. So this is 2025, but if we move to 2023 and we see the distribution, we say, okay, we had kochia in 2023. It's spread quite the same. But if we move to 2021, here what we can see is that we did not have that much kochia in 2021. So I'm just going to go back 1 second, and you can see this is how kochia has been spreading in the past 6 years. It's just a huge distribution of kochia in the last few years. It's really concerning. Again, 2021, it was a year that we did have a drought. So like pests, diseases, everything was reduced. But again, this is really concerning. I'm going to move really fast so this is distribution of green foxtail, and again, it's mostly distributed in South Dakota and North Dakota. It's really, I would say it's kind of a historical weed, and it did not change much. There is not a temporal pattern. It's there, it's been there, and it continues to be there. Well, and this is distribution again of pigweed. And what we can see pigweed is that we have more green, like moderate infestations towards the north part of the states. Saying that, we do also have information regarding birds and insects, and we saw that 34% of the fields that we scouted had some kind of bird damage. Jen can already talk a little bit about some of the results of the survey, most the seed samples analysis that we had, that Dr. Jared Pacifica is the one leading them. So I'm just going to move forward a little bit with the distribution of the bird damage, and it's something that's been constant in the past year, that the north west part of the state usually have some kind of important bird damage. So that 100 there, it's 100%. It says that all the plants that we scouted, they have some kind of damage. It's not like 100% of damage, in like the whole field was completely devastated. It's that all the plants have some kind of damage. And I'm actually going to move forward with this because I think I'm out of time. So I'm just going to go really fast with longhorn beetle. That's been interesting insect that has been populating our fields, and it was the second insect in terms of relevance that it was present. Again, we can see that dectes is mostly concentrated towards the west part of the state, and actually, if we compare dectes on 2025 to 2023, that this is the distribution of 2023, we have a way less presence of dectes than previous years. So the population reduced quite a bit compared to previous years. So even though it was the second insect in terms of relevance, it was not as prevalent as previous years. So that's kind of a good thing. And I'm just going to say thank you to this National Sunflower Association for supporting this effort. And please let me know if you do have any questions.